My parents refused to help pay for my daughter's cancer treatment, saying they couldn't afford it. After she passed, I found out they'd been secretly paying for my sister's kids' private school. I confronted them at dinner and finally lost my temper. My daughter passed away 5 months ago after a year-long battle with leukemia. I still can't say those words out loud without choking up. She was 9. She had the kind of smile that made people stop and look twice, even in the hospital when she had no hair and looked so small in those oversized gowns. I promised her I'd do everything to help her get better, and I tried. I really did. When she got diagnosed, I was barely keeping it together. I work as a technician at a local manufacturing plant. It pays okay, but not enough for endless medical bills. I burned through my savings within months, sold my car, took a loan, maxed out every card I had. Her mom, my late wife, died when our daughter was 4, so it's just been me. There wasn't anyone else to share the load. I didn't care about myself anymore, I just wanted her to have a chance. I went to my parents around the halfway point, when I couldn't hide how bad it had gotten anymore. I told them what the bills looked like, how much the next round of treatment would cost, how my overtime wasn't covering even half of it. They've always been financially stable. My dad was an accountant, my mom a retired teacher. They own their house outright, live comfortably, travel occasionally. I thought, if there was ever a time to ask for help, this was it. They said they couldn't afford it. They didn't say it cruelly, just matter-of-factly, like I was asking them to fund a vacation instead of save their granddaughter's life. They told me they'd already helped my sister a lot lately, and that they had to be careful in retirement. They suggested I apply for grants, maybe reach out to the church. My mom offered to come by more often to cook a few meals so I could focus on work, which I appreciated, but still was very upset honestly. I remember going home that night and just sitting in the driveway for an hour. My parents have always been like that, polite and practically distant. My sister, on the other hand, has always been the golden one. She's 34, married, 2 kids, nice house, nicer cars, vacations every year. I don't envy her, but it's always been obvious our parents see her as their success story. When my daughter's condition started getting worse, my parents barely showed up. They visited the hospital once when she first started chemo, took a few pictures for the family group chat, and that was pretty much it. After that, it was always, "We don't want to intrude," or "We'll come when things are more stable." They'd send a text now and then, but that's it. I'd get these fake-sounding checking-in messages while I was sleeping in a plastic chair next to my daughter's hospital bed, trying to figure out if I could afford the next copay. She passed away in February. Peacefully, they said. I don't think there's anything peaceful about watching your child fade away in your arms. At the funeral, my parents stood in the front row, cried quietly, told everyone how brave she was. They gave me a card and told me how proud they were of how I handled everything. Then they left early because it was too much to bear. My sister stayed a bit longer, but even she avoided eye contact most of the time. After that, I didn't talk to anyone for a while. I went to work, came home, stared at her room, and went to sleep. It's strange how grief can make everything feel both loud and empty. I thought the worst of it was over, that nothing could shock me anymore. Then, about a month ago, I found out something that made me feel like I was reliving the same pain all over again. My sister was talking about how mom and dad had been helping her out a lot lately since her husband's company cut bonuses. I didn't think much of it until she mentioned they'd finally paid off the rest of the kids' tuition for the year. She said it so casually, like it was normal. I asked what she meant, and she said our parents had been paying for her kids' private school for the past few years, around $20,000 a year. I don't think I heard half of what she said after that. My parents told me they couldn't afford to help pay for my daughter's treatment, but they've been paying for my sister's kids to go to private school. The same parents who told me to apply for grants. The same parents who couldn't be bothered to visit the hospital more than once. It wasn't about money. It never was. It was about who they wanted to help, who they thought was worth helping. I keep going over it in my head, trying to rationalize it. Maybe they thought my sister needed it more. Maybe they thought my daughter's chances were too low to be worth it. But every time I think about it, I feel sick. I can't even look at their faces in the family photos anymore without feeling angry and disgusted. They didn't just let me down, they let my daughter down, and I don't know how to forgive that. I'm supposed to have dinner with them next week for my birthday. They asked if I wanted to spend some time together, just us. Normally, I'd find an excuse to skip it, but I think I'm done pretending everything's fine. I can't sit across from them and act like nothing happened. I don't know if I'm ready to explode on them, but I know I can't keep this inside anymore. I'm not someone who starts fights, but I can't keep swallowing this kind of pain just to make everyone else comfortable. Update 1. I read every comment on my post and honestly didn't expect so many people to care or even relate. It took me some deep thinking to finally sit down with them, and even longer to decide how I wanted to approach it. I didn't want another emotional breakdown or to walk away wondering if I'd gone too far, but I also knew that if I didn't say something soon, I'd never be able to look them in the eye again without resentment boiling underneath. They invited me to dinner for my birthday, like nothing had changed. I almost didn't go, but part of me wanted them to see me. Not the quiet son who always stayed calm while they praised my sister. Not the one they could guilt into silence. Just me, angry, grieving, and done pretending. Dinner started normal enough. My mom asked about work. My dad talked about the weather. My sister's kids were mentioned, like they were the center of the world. I waited until the food came before I brought it up. I had printed out copies of the tuition receipts I got my hands on and slid them across the table. I asked them to explain how they could afford that when they told me they couldn't spare anything for my daughter's treatment. The silence that followed was so heavy it made my chest hurt. My dad didn't even look up at first. My mom stared at the papers like she didn't recognize them. Then she started crying, saying they didn't mean it like that they had to make decisions they thought were best for the family. My dad finally said they had to set priorities and thought my sister's kids needed stability because their education would shape their future. It felt like something cracked inside me. I don't even remember everything I said, only that it came out fast and cold. I told them how I begged them for help while their granddaughter was wasting away in a hospital bed, how I worked every shift I could find, skipped meals, sold my car, how they showed up at the funeral and hugged me like they had no part in how things turned out. And now I find out that the money they claimed they didn't have was going to private school fees for kids who already had everything. My mom kept saying they thought I was managing. My dad muttered something about not wanting to go broke. My sister sat there looking at her plate, saying almost nothing. I told them they could keep their priorities, but I wanted nothing to do with them anymore. I said I was tired of trying to earn love from people who saw my daughter's suffering as less important than a tuition bill. My dad told me to calm down. My mom started sobbing again. My sister told me I was being cruel. I walked out. Later that night, my mom called, saying they didn't know how bad things really were. She asked me to come back and talk it through. I told her there was nothing left to talk about. That was the last real conversation we had. Since then, they've tried to contact me through my sister, mostly guilt-tripping messages about how I misunderstood them or how they're too old for this kind of stress. My dad texted me once, saying I should let go of anger and remember family matters more than money. I haven't replied. My sister's husband called a few days later to smooth things over, but I could tell he was more worried about family drama than about what they did. He said my parents were embarrassed and didn't expect me to react like that. I told him he shouldn't expect anything from me anymore either. Since the dinner, I've been thinking about everything differently. I realized that my parents always had this image in their heads of me being the independent one, the one who didn't need help. They used that as a way to justify doing nothing. Meanwhile, my sister could call them crying about a flat tire, and they'd move mountains. I used to think that was just family dynamics. Now I see it for what it was. Favoritism wrapped up in excuses about responsibility. Update 3. It's now about 3 months since the birthday dinner. I thought walking away from them that night would give me some sense of closure, but it hasn't. If anything, it's made me realize how deep the hurt really goes. A few weeks after that dinner, my mom sent me a handwritten card. It wasn't an apology. It was one of those vague, guilt-laced messages about family being all we have left, and how your daughter wouldn't want you to hold on to hate. She included a check for $2,000, made out in memory of her. It wasn't enough to make any real difference in my life, and it felt like hush money more than anything. I didn't cash it. I put it in a drawer and haven't touched it since. A couple weeks later, my dad called. He didn't mention the argument, didn't say sorry. He just talked about yard work and how the neighbors had been asking how I was doing. I listened for a few minutes, then hung up. I didn't have the energy to pretend things were normal. Therapy has been helping a bit. My counselor keeps telling me that I'm trying to find logic in people who act out of fear and guilt. She says they'll never admit what they did wrong because it would mean facing the truth about how they treated their grandchild. She's probably right. I've spent so long waiting for them to acknowledge it that I've forgotten they might never have the capacity to. My sister's been the hardest part to deal with. She keeps trying to mediate. She calls every couple of weeks saying things like, "Mom's not sleeping," or "Dad feels awful," as if that's supposed to fix anything. When I told her I wasn't ready to talk to them, she said I was punishing the family, like asking for accountability is some kind of cruelty. Then about a month ago, something happened that made me realize just how deep this goes. My sister's husband called me one night after a few drinks. He's not the type to gossip, but he started rambling about how this whole situation got blown out of proportion. He said he remembered my parents talking to him back when my daughter was first diagnosed. They told him they hoped she'd pull through, but they couldn't jeopardize their retirement, helping me. Those were his exact words. He said it like it was just a casual conversation, like it wasn't the most gut-wrenching thing I've ever heard. I hung up on him, and I just sat there in my kitchen staring at the wall for what felt like hours. It confirmed everything I already knew, but didn't want to believe. They had the money. They just didn't think my daughter was worth it. I confronted my sister the next day. She said her husband shouldn't have told me that, and that I was taking it out of context. She said they were scared of losing their savings, that it wasn't personal. I told her it doesn't get more personal than choosing money over your grandchild's life. She said I was being dramatic. That was the last real conversation we had. Since then, I've stopped answering her calls. I needed space. My parents have left a few voicemails, mostly emotional ones about how time is precious and life is too short for grudges. I delete them without listening all the way through. I know what they want for me to come back, pretend none of it happened, and keep the family peace. I'm done playing that role. I got rid of most of my daughter's medical equipment. It's still hard to walk past the door, but I'm trying to make it something peaceful instead of painful. I started volunteering at the pediatric wing of the hospital she was treated in. It's not easy, but it gives me a sense of purpose again. There's one more thing. Last week, I found out through a mutual friend that my parents have been telling people they did everything they could for me. They said they helped as much as they could within their means. It made my stomach turn. It's not just a lie. It's the fact that they're rewriting history to protect their image. I thought about calling them out publicly, but I didn't. Not because I'm protecting them, but because I don't need validation from anyone anymore. The truth doesn't need an audience. Final update. It's been a little over half a year since everything blew up, and I think I've finally accepted that my parents and I aren't going to have a normal relationship again. I'm not angry all the time anymore, mostly just tired. There's a kind of peace that comes with realizing that some people, even the ones who raised you, will never be who you needed them to be. After the dinner confrontation, I cut off most contact with them. At first, they didn't seem to believe I was serious. My mom would send texts about random things: the weather, some family friend's birthday, a photo of my sister's kids. My dad would leave short voicemails saying things like, "Hope you're doing okay," but never once mentioning what happened. They acted like we just had a small argument instead of something that completely broke whatever relationship we had left. For a while, I ignored it. I focused on trying to rebuild my own life. I started going to therapy more regularly and kept working overtime when I could. I didn't want to think about them, but I still caught myself wondering if I made a mistake, if cutting them off made me cold or ungrateful. Then my therapist said something that stuck with me. "You're not cutting them off because you hate them. You're doing it because you finally believe you deserve better." That hit hard, because for so long, I really did believe I just had to accept things as they were. That my parents were old-fashioned, that they loved us both, but just showed it differently. But now, looking back, I can see the pattern. My sister always got help, always got the benefit of the doubt. When I was struggling, it was framed as a lesson in independence. A few months ago, my dad called again. I picked up this time. He said they wanted me to come over for Sunday dinner. I told him I'd think about it. I didn't plan on actually going, but I guess a part of me wanted to see if they'd finally acknowledge what they did. Instead, a few days later, I got a card in the mail, another one of those "We're family, we love you" messages. There was another check inside, this time $5,000. The note said it was to help with anything you need. I didn't cash it. I didn't even respond. I just put it in a box with the other one they sent months ago. I don't know if it was supposed to be an apology or another attempt to buy my silence. Either way, I didn't want it. Around that same time, my sister reached out. She asked to meet for coffee, said she wanted to clear the air. I agreed because I didn't want to leave things unfinished. She started by saying she understood why I was hurt, that she didn't realize how bad things were when my daughter was sick. Then she started explaining how mom and dad didn't mean to choose sides, how they were scared and didn't know how to help. I told her I didn't want another excuse. What they did wasn't about fear, it was about choice. She cried a bit, said she felt stuck in the middle. I told her she didn't have to be. She could keep her relationship with them. I wasn't asking her to take sides, but I also wasn't going to pretend nothing happened, just so family gatherings would be less awkward. I think she understood, because she stopped trying to fix it after that. The next big thing was Christmas. It was the first one I didn't spend with my family. My parents hosted a big dinner at my sister's house, same as every year. I got the invite, but I ignored it. Instead, I stayed home. I baked cookies, played old Christmas movies, and lit a candle for my daughter. It was quiet, but it was peaceful. For the first time in years, I didn't spend the holiday forcing a smile around people who made me feel invisible. There's one thing I haven't talked about until now. After everything with my parents, I decided to do something in my daughter's name. I set up a small scholarship at her old school for kids who've lost a sibling or parent to illness. It's not much, just a few $100s a year that I fund myself, but it's something. It feels right. Every time I contribute, it feels like I'm choosing to turn all that pain into something good, something my parents never could. Something I've realized over the past few months is that I never really wanted to go to extreme lengths against my parents, even after everything. There's a part of me that knows the type of revenge I could have taken, publicly shaming them, making them feel the weight of their choices in ways that would have been undeniable. I could have blocked them completely and made a spectacle online about how they failed me, or refused every attempt at contact forever. But I didn't. And I think that's worth explaining, because some people reading my story might wonder if I just let them off easy. The truth is, my anger toward them was always mixed with something else. Sadness, disbelief, a kind of exhaustion that comes from realizing the people you trusted the most aren't capable of being who you needed. I didn't want to go nuclear because I didn't want to turn my grief and frustration into something that would have made me feel worse later. Revenge, I've learned, has a way of eating at you more than the person it's aimed at. I wanted control over my life, not over their guilt. I also think part of me held back because, despite everything, they're still my parents. That's complicated and messy, but it's real. There's a natural line you cross when you try to dismantle someone's life, and I wasn't ready or willing to do that. I wanted them to feel the consequences in the quiet way that matters. The absence of me, my withdrawal, was intentional. My silence was louder than anything I could have screamed. I chose the long game, the kind of consequence that isn't flashy but undeniable. I stopped being their outlet, their approval, their success story. And honestly, some of it comes down to dignity. I didn't want my daughter's name associated with some petty vendetta, or for her to ever feel that the pain we endured became something ugly. I wanted to model a different kind of strength, the kind that doesn't need to humiliate others to be real. Choosing to step back from them, to exist in the world without them, felt like a better kind of victory than lashing out ever could have been. So yes, I didn't make them squirm, didn't post their failures for all to see, didn't demand apologies that I knew would never come. I just let the truth sit quietly in the space between us. The fact that they've tried to reach out, sent money, sent cards, all of that shows me that absence speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. I control my boundaries, I control my life, and I control the energy I give to them. That's extreme enough in my book, and it's far healthier than dragging everyone into a scene that wouldn't have fixed anything anyway. At the end of the day, my decision wasn't about sparing them. It was about sparing myself from anger that could have consumed me, from revenge that wouldn't heal me, and from a battle that didn't need to be fought to prove anything.